Berlin, April 21, 1945. The WWII was dead. German military intelligence dissolved by Hitler's order 9 months earlier, but the men who ran it were still alive, and so were still working. Oberstleutnant Klaus Richter disappeared on April 21, 1945. Not from combat, not from a prison cell, from a basement office in the Foreign Office Annex on Wilhelmstrasse. The building still stood while the city burned. Richter was 39 years old. WWII Section 3, Counterintelligence. 15 years in military intelligence. Fluent in English and Russian. Posted to Turkey, 1942 to 1943. Returned to Berlin, June 1944. His personnel file looked ordinary. Mid-level officer. Competent. No decorations. No disciplinary actions. A bureaucrat in uniform processing reports while the Reich collapsed. But 3 details didn't fit. First, Richter received priority travel authorization to Switzerland in March 1945, approved by one of Admiral Canaris's former deputies, signed 3 weeks before Canaris was executed for treason. Official purpose, document security consultation. Richter never took the trip. Second, his office was in the Foreign Office Annex, not WWII headquarters. The WWII had been absorbed into the SS-controlled Reich Security Main Office in June 1944. Richter should have been reassigned. He wasn't. He kept his office, kept his files, kept working in a building that technically no longer housed military intelligence. Third, on April 21, 1945, with Soviet forces 8 days from the Reich Chancellery, Richter's office burned. Not from artillery, not from Allied bombs, from the inside. Witness statement, Foreign Office clerk. Smoke coming from basement level, approximately 10:30. Nobody responding to calls. Door locked from inside. When building security forced the door open 2 hours later. Empty. File cabinets overturned. Ash in the wastebaskets. Documents reduced to fragments. And Richter gone. No body. No note. No witness to his exit. He had simply erased himself. British signals intelligence intercepted a coded transmission on April 20th, 1945, 1 day before the fire. Source location, Berlin. Destination, unknown. The decrypt, released 42 years later, in 1987, contained 1 line. Package secured. Extraction confirmed. KR. The intercept was filed under miscellaneous enemy communications, origin uncertain. No analysis conducted at the time. No investigation into the sender's identity or what package meant. The message sat in an archive until a researcher noticed the initials in 1987 and requested context. No context was provided. May 8, 1945. Germany surrendered. Allied forces began arresting intelligence officers. The Americans wanted WWII personnel for interrogation. The British wanted anyone connected to espionage in Turkey or the Middle East. The Soviets wanted counterintelligence specialists who knew their networks. Richter's name appeared on 3 arrest lists. U.S. Counterintelligence Corps. Richter, Klaus, WWII Section 3. Priority detention for interrogation. British MI6. Richter, Turkey posting 1942 to 1943. Possible penetration of Allied networks. Locate and detain. Soviet NKVD. Richter, Kate, counterintelligence specialist, wanted for questioning regarding Eastern operations. 3 intelligence services. 3 detention orders. None resulted in arrest. American military police reported him not located. British investigators marked the file subject whereabouts unknown. Continued search authorized. Soviet records listed him once, then went silent. He wasn't found. June 1945. A man named Klaus Richter appeared in a displaced persons camp near Munich. Age 42. Occupation, schoolteacher. Claimed origin, Hamburg. No military service record on file. No connection to intelligence work. Different man. Common name, but the name created problems. Investigators checking displaced persons rosters found 17 Klaus Richters in Bavaria alone between May and August 1945. Photographs weren't mandatory. Fingerprints weren't systematically collected. Identity verification depended on self-reporting, and whatever documents a person carried, the name became noise. One Klaus Richter disappeared into 17 others. Allied intelligence assumed death. Standard protocol. If an officer couldn't be located within 6 months and no witness confirmed survival, the case was marked presumed deceased, further action suspended. Richter's arrest warrant was withdrawn in November 1945. File closed. 1946 to 1952. The Nuremberg trials prosecuted intelligence officers. WWII personnel testified against each other. Some were charged as war criminals. Others became prosecution witnesses. The organizational charts were reconstructed. Names were documented. Crimes were cataloged. Richter's name never appeared. Not in trial transcripts. Not in witness lists. Not in extensive WWII organizational breakdowns compiled by American prosecutors. His personnel file, which should have been among the thousands of captured German intelligence documents, wasn't in the archive. It was missing. If you're enjoying this story, please subscribe to support the channel. 1950. West German government began reconstructing Wehrmacht records for pension claims and denazification proceedings. Researchers requested WWII Section 3 personnel rosters from U.S. occupation authorities. The response: WWII Section 3 records incomplete. Significant documentation destroyed during final weeks of war or lost in capture. But records for other WWII sections survived. Section 1, espionage, and Section 2, sabotage. Personnel files were largely intact. Only Section 3 had substantial gaps, and Richter's complete file was one of them. The CIA released partial histories of wartime intelligence operations, heavily redacted, approved for limited academic access. One footnote in a 400-page document about WWII defections. Protective custody arrangements were made for cooperative sources, 1944 to 1945, under Operation Necessity Protocols. No names, no specifics, just acknowledgement that some German intelligence officers received alternative disposition instead of arrest or trial. The document remained classified until 1998. When it was finally released, the footnote generated no attention, no follow-up research, no media coverage. It was a historical detail. Nothing more. 1971. British National Archives released wartime MI6 files under the 30-year rule. A memo dated May 12, 1945, confirmation of safe house placement for Subject R, as per April coordination agreement with American colleagues. Subject R. No full name given. No operation specified. The memo was cross-referenced under two categories: Turkey operations and Berlin station communications. A researcher requested clarification in 1979. MI6 response: unable to provide additional information. Context files remain classified under ongoing operational security provisions. Subject R was never identified. 1984. An academic studying post-war German immigration to South America found a passenger manifest. Port Buenos Aires. Arrival September 14, 1947. Listed passenger: Carl Ritter. Age 41. Occupation: translator. Declared origin: Switzerland. The researcher checked Swiss residency records. No Carl Ritter matching that age or occupation. No birth certificate. No employment documentation. No prior address. The man had appeared in Switzerland with no documented past, then emigrated to Argentina. The researcher noted the name similarity to Klaus Richter, one letter difference in the surname. He filed an inquiry with the German Federal Archives. Response: insufficient evidence to establish identity connection. Ritter and Richter are common surname variations. No basis for further investigation. The case wasn't pursued. 1995. United States began declassifying wartime intelligence files under the Nazi War Crimes Disclosure Act. Document 4721 in the OSS Archive release. Debriefing summary: German source Nightingale, May-August 1945. The document described organizational structure of WWII Section 3. Personnel conflicts. Soviet penetration attempts of German intelligence. Names of double agents. The source's identity redacted. 43 consecutive lines describing the source's background, role, and wartime activities redacted. 1 visible line. Source provided actionable intelligence on Soviet intelligence networks. April-May 1945. Relocation authorized under protective agreement, June 1945. The file noted Nightingale continued providing information through 1947. Then the references stopped. No explanation. The codename Nightingale appeared nowhere else in the declassified OSS archive. Between 1995 and 2020, 3 historians specializing in wartime intelligence requested additional Nightingale documentation. CIA response, 1998. No additional documents available for release at this time. CIA response, 2007. Request under review. Response pending completion of declassification assessment. CIA response, 2019. Records related to joint Allied source operations remain under review. No release date determined. British National Archives. Similar inquiries. Files related to shared wartime assets remain classified under intelligence cooperation agreements. German Federal Archives. We have no domestic record of this operational codename. No agency confirmed anything. No agency denied anything. Just institutional silence. Langley, Virginia, March 2026. The CIA released 847 pages of previously classified material. 80-year automatic declassification rule. Files dating to 1944 to 1946. The release was scheduled for January 2025. It was delayed 14 months. No public explanation provided. 1 file in the batch. Source Nightingale. Operational Summary and Disposition, 1944 to 1951. 131 pages. 74 pages partially redacted. 57 pages released in full. Page 12, third paragraph. Nightingale true name, Klaus Richter, Oberstleutnant, Abwehr Section 3, German Military Intelligence. Recruitment date, October 1944. Recruiting officer, OSS Berlin Station, operating from neutral Switzerland. Initial contact, established through Turkish intermediary with prior British intelligence connections. Richter had approached the Americans. They hadn't recruited him. He volunteered. According to the file, Richter offered 3 categories of intelligence. First, real-time information on Abwehr penetration operations targeting Allied networks in Turkey, Switzerland, and Sweden. Second, identities of Soviet agents operating inside German military and civilian intelligence structures. Third, complete organizational breakdown of Abwehr Section 3 personnel, operations, and methods. In exchange, he wanted protection, extraction from Germany, new identity, guarantee of no prosecution. The OSS accepted. The operation was assigned cryptonym Nightingale in November 1944. Richter's intelligence was graded highly reliable after cross-verification with British and French sources. Between November 1944 and April 1945, Nightingale provided 47 intelligence reports. 31 were classified actionable. 16 led to identification or arrest of Axis intelligence personnel operating against Allied interests. April 21, 1945. Richter received extraction orders via coded wireless transmission. Instructions: destroy office records, eliminate evidence of source activity, proceed to designated safe house in American-controlled territory. The burned office wasn't destruction of evidence in panic. It was operational protocol. A CIA officer, name redacted in the file, met Richter in the British occupation zone on April 23, 1945. Richter was transported to Frankfurt, then to a displaced persons processing facility under false documentation. He spent 3 months in debriefing, June through August 1945. The intelligence he provided during debriefing led to identification of 17 Soviet penetrations of Western intelligence services between 1945 and 1947. 4 penetrations were inside British intelligence. 6 were in French services. 7 were Allied intelligence officers or civilian employees recruited by Soviet handlers during or immediately after the war. His information was used in classified briefings but never attributed. The sources were protected. September 1947. Richter was provided with Swiss identity documents under the name Karl Ritter. The Swiss government was not informed. The documents were fabricated by CIA technical services using legitimate Swiss paperwork templates acquired through intelligence channels. Richter, now Ritter, was relocated to Buenos Aires, Argentina. He worked as a translator for a German-language newspaper. Married in 1949. Fathered 2 children. He lived quietly. No intelligence work. No contact with former colleagues. No return to Europe. He died in Buenos Aires in 1989, age 83. The obituary in the German-language community newspaper listed him as Karl Ritter, translator, survived by his wife and 2 children. No mention of military service. No mention of Germany before 1947. Following the CIA release, the British National Archives released a corresponding file in August 2026. MI6 had run a parallel operation with Richter beginning March 1945. British cryptonym, Sparrow. The British believed they had independently recruited him. The file shows they didn't discover his OSS connection until after his extraction in April. MI6 memo to OSS May 15, 1945. Request immediate clarification regarding subject are disposition and operational control. Our protective agreement with source appears to conflict with U.S. operational authority. Recommend coordination conference. OSS reply May 18, 1945. Source's U.S.-controlled asset under prior operational agreement dating October 1944. British claims noted but not recognized. Recommend British coordination cease to avoid operational compromise. The British accepted American primacy. Sparrow was administratively closed. All intelligence product was transferred to U.S. control. Richter had been playing both services, and when discovered, both chose to protect him anyway. The intelligence value was too high to waste on inter-service disputes. The files confirm Richter's reporting prevented Soviet recruitment of at least 9 Western intelligence officers in the immediate post-war period. His information exposed a Soviet penetration of British operations in Turkey that had been active since 1943. Operational value. Significant. Moral cost. A Nazi intelligence officer received immunity, relocation, financial support, and a new life. But one section of the Nightingale file remains redacted. Pages 104 through 131. 28 pages. Section title visible. Source motivation assessment and pre-recruitment contact history. CIA explanation for continued classification. Release with compromised intelligence methods and source protection protocols still in operational use. The British file contains a corresponding gap. Pages 67 through 89. 23 pages. Same subject matter. Same classification rationale. Both gaps cover the same time period. October 1943 through September 1944, 12 months, the year before Richter supposedly first approached American intelligence. A German researcher examining newly opened WWII administrative files in 2026 found a partially burned memorandum dated June 1944. The document, barely legible, recovered from a damaged archive, referenced a Section 3 officer under internal investigation for communication irregularities and unaccounted absences during Turkey assignment, 1942 to 1943. The officer's name was burned away, but the personnel identification number survived, 4427B. Cross-referencing with reconstructed WWII personnel rosters. Number 4427. B was assigned to Oberstleutnant Klaus Richter. The investigation file itself was never recovered. No conclusions documented. No disciplinary action recorded. But the date matters. June 1944. For months before Richter allegedly first contacted the OSS in October 1944. Someone inside German intelligence suspected him, documented the suspicion, opened an investigation, and yet Richter remained in position in Berlin with full access to counterintelligence files and ongoing operations against Allied networks. Either the investigation was dropped as unfounded, or it was never pursued seriously, or Richter was already protected. by someone on the German side, before the Americans, before the British. The CIA file says Richter approached OSS in October 1944. The British file says he approached MI6 in March 1945. The German memo says he was under suspicion in June 1944. But no file explains why an officer under investigation for communication irregularities would remain in a sensitive counterintelligence position, unsupervised, for nearly a year while the Reich collapsed. No file explains who protected him inside German intelligence before the Allies extracted him. And no file explains why the sections covering his motivations, his reasons of betrayal, his first contacts, his earliest intelligence activities, remain classified 81 years after the war ended. The file was opened. Partially, Klaus Richter was Nightingale. He worked for American intelligence. The British knew. He was extracted, protected, relocated, and died under an assumed name in Argentina. That much is confirmed. But the full story, what he did before October 1944, who he contacted first, and why an officer under German investigation stayed protected long enough to defect, is still locked. Someone decided what could be released, and what couldn't. The file stayed sealed for 81 years. It's open now, but not all of it. If you like this story, please subscribe to support this channel.